Hello there all my lovely jewelry makers, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial we're going to be making a color changing wire macrame bracelet. Now technically it's not actually color changing, it just kind of gives the illusion that it is, because when moving it at certain angles more of one color shows, and then we're moving it again more of the other color shows. So it's kind of a bit of a trick, but it's a cool technique nonetheless. So if you want to learn how to make one, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we'll need. The wire that I'm using is a silver coated copper wire and a copper wire. And the first gauge here is a 0.8mm and I have one in each colour. These will be our holding wires. I then have a 0.5mm wire and again one in each colour, and these will be our working wires. Now I do highly recommend that you use a soft wire when doing wire macrame. It just makes it much easier to work with and also less likely to break. Now to finish off the ends of our piece, I'm going to use these ribbon ends that have loops in them where we can attach our findings. So I'm using a lobster claw clasp and extender chain and just a couple of jump rings to put it all together. Of course you can use whatever kind of clasp you prefer. And along with the ribbon ends we also just need some glue, so I'm using this E6000. It's nice and strong and it works well with metal. Now to work on, I'm going to be using this mini macrame board here, and I'm going to work on the blank side. So it has these notches all the way around. It makes it really nice and easy to work with our macrame. We then of course also need a few pliers. So I've got my flush cutters here so we can cut our wire, some chain nose and tweezer nose pliers to help manipulate the wire, and of course for the jump rings. So if you want the full material list and useful links, they'll be in the description box down below. So let's get it all ready and let's get started. Now the length of wires that we'll need is first of all 3 lengths of a 0.8mm here of about 35 centimeters each, and I have 2 of one color and 1 of the other. Of course you can mix that up how you want to. And then we need 2 lengths of a 0.5mm here of about 2 meters each, and here again I have 1 of each color. So the first thing we need to do is attach our wires to a macrame board here. So I'm going to grab my thickest wire, so that's a 0.8mm here, and the base wires, and I'm going to work across the long end of the board, and we need to then attach these wires across into the middle slots on that side, on one of the short sides. And I'm just going to take the copper one, because I only have one of that, and put that right in the middle and put it through the slot, and then I'm just going to bend it around the back, making sure obviously there's a small tail. And then the silver, one of the silvers goes on one side, bend it around the back, and the other silver goes on the other side. And that is because I want my silver rows to be on the outside and the copper row to be on the inside. I like to kind of match up the base wire with the working wires. Now I'm also just going to attach them on the opposite end, so just go into the corresponding slots and again bend them around the back to get the ends out of the way until we have them all fastened down on our board, and it looks a little something like that. Now we need to grab our working wires, so I'm going to take my silver one and attach that through the same slot as the silver one on the right side here. So just bring that down through the same slot, and then this we want to keep loose, so we don't want to attach that on the bottom as well, because obviously they're the working wires, so we need to use them. And then the copper one is going to be attached in the same way, but on the other side, so on the other silver one. So just put that through the slot, and then we can kind of just smooth them out nicely, bring them down, and there we now have all the wires set up, ready to start working. And I added the working cords in this way with the colors, so the silver on the right and the copper on the left, because the silver is then going to end up being on both sides here and the copper will end up being in the middle. So like I said, they're going to match with the holding wires. So then the technique we're going to be using is kind of the basic principle of a square knot, but instead of having just one holding cord, we have 3 that we need to weave our working cords in and out of. So I also just in the beginning here like to push the 2 outer ones a little bit closer with the base wires. Now what I'm going to do is start with the left side, so that in my case is the copper one. So I'm just going to grab that wire, and of course at the moment they are quite long to work with, but the more knots we do, the more of the wire is going to get used up and it's going to get more manageable as we go. Now what we need to do is, like I said, weave these working wires in between the base wires in a certain way to achieve the look. So first of all, the left one here goes underneath the first wire. It goes over the middle one, so over the copper one, which means it's going to be showing on this side more, and then again under the last one. So that corresponds with the colors matching up there. So it goes underneath the 2 silver, which is what we want, but over the copper. And then it's going to go over the other working wire on the other side here. You might as well just bring it over straight away. It's kind of the rhythm I've got into, and it makes it go a little bit faster once you get into it. So just pull it through gently, and it lays like this. And like I said, it then goes over the other working wire, which now comes underneath it. So I'm going to grab that next, get right to the end of it, and then here, like I said, it comes under here. We need to then go over the first silver one because it needs to show over that. Then I'm going to go above the other working wire, come underneath the middle holding wire, and then come up on the other side of the middle one, but below the other working wire there. So it's kind of crossing underneath just like this, from above, come under, and then come up below. And then we bring it over the remaining silver one here. And then we need to make sure we come through the loop of, in this case, the copper one that we originally brought through. And then we can start to just pull it tighter. So do that nice and gentle, because we are working with wire as opposed to cord or fiber of some sort. So obviously the wire is far less forgiving and it can break if you're not careful. So just gently pull it through, and then I'm just going to gently pull them a bit tighter here until we're kind of at a point where it seems like it's going to get a little bit messed up. Now what I'm then going to do is start to hold my wires down as I'm pulling them tight. And of course this is just the first one for now. So like I said, kind of guide your wires in place, pull with your fingers and your hand, but then hold down the wires at the same time with your index fingers as you pull it tight, kind of as tight as it'll go without overdoing it. Now the beginning can always look a little bit less even than the rest, but you can always cut that off if you need to. But that is the first half of our first knot. Now I'm going to make the other half to complete it, which means I'm going to start with the same wire, but that is now on the other side, so I'm going to start with the right one, which is the same one that we started with before, but it's just swapped sides. And we're going to do exactly the same thing. So I'm going to go under the first one, which is silver, over the middle one, which is copper, and under the last one, which is silver. And then as I'm bringing it through, I'm also making it go over the other working wire. So just gently bring it through, nice and easy, until we have just a little bit left on this side here. Now I'm going to grab the silver one that's on the other side, get to the end of it, and then it's already coming underneath the other working wire. We then need to go over the first silver, because remember it needs to show, so they need to match. And then I'm coming down between the first and the middle holding wire. I'm coming underneath the middle one and up between the middle and the third, but below the other working wire. So remember, we're going down above it and then coming up below it. And then as I'm pulling that out of it, go over the remaining silver one in my case, so the third one, and then just bring it through the loop of the other working wire. And then gently pull it through until we get to this point here where the loops are getting smaller. And then it's the same principle. We need to pull these tight, so just kind of hold onto them with your hands and fingers and pull them while you're using your fingers to hold the wires down and kind of guiding them into place as well. Because like I said, it is wire, so it's less forgiving. So if you do make a mistake or something gets pulled kind of into the wrong position, it is hard, if not sometimes impossible, to kind of fix it. Because sometimes you can undo it and redo it, but it makes the wire far more likely to break the more you kind of bend it. So that is now the first full complete knot, and as you can see, it's kind of the same principle as a square knot. We're just using more holding wires and weaving our working wires in and out of them before we tighten the knot. But then we basically just need to keep repeating this. So what I kind of like to do, because it is a little bit complicated, especially compared to a regular square knot, I kind of like to make a little rhythm that I follow and I say in my head every time I move my wire here. So I take my left one, I know I'm always going to start with, in my case, the copper one. I'm then going to bring that under the first, over the second, and under the third, and over the working wire. So basically under, over, under, over. And that is what I kind of keep saying in my head as I'm making it, just to try and avoid making any mistakes, which might end up causing issues with having to undo it and then maybe break the wire. So I then take the silver one on the other side, and it's already coming underneath, so we don't really need to account for that, but just make sure that it is coming under that first working wire. Now in this case here, we then need to come over the first holding wire, and then like I said, under the middle one and over the last one. But in the meantime, we also need to go above and below the other working wire. So what I kind of like to do is say I go up and over to then come underneath the middle one here. So I come down and under, and then as I'm pulling that, we need to go over and through, and then just gently pulling that all the way through here. So for this one, we went up and over, down and under, and up and through. And that is the other one that I like to say in my head, and obviously that's the one that's a little bit more complicated. But once I say it, it kind of gets stuck in my head and I get used to it, and it does help me remember how I need to take my wires through. Now again, hold down on your wires and guide them with your fingers as you're pulling them tight, just like that. That's the first half of this knot. To make the other half, use the same wire, but it's now on the other side. So remember the rhythm that we make. We go under, over, under. And also just a little trick, I like to kind of just push down on the middle wire there. It helps make it easier to go through. So under, and then over. Bring that through. And then the silver one is already coming under the other working wire, so we don't need to worry about that, other than making sure that it is. We then need to come up and over, down and under, and up and through. And then just again, gently pull that all the way through until we get them closer to pulling them tight. And then just guide them into place and make sure nothing kind of goes out of shape. Now what's going to happen if you don't kind of help push these down, I can show you here, they're going to want to kind of curl up and end up tightening in a bit of a wrong way. It's going to sit not quite correctly. So that's why I like to push down on the wires just to kind of force them into the position that I want them to have as I'm tightening them. And that is the other half then of that knot. So we now have 2 full knots on here, and you basically just want to keep repeating this, keep going the same way that I've showed you, maybe repeating that rhythm that we made until we have the length that we need. Now another tip I want to give is just as you're working with the wire, you're going to find that obviously because of the warmth of your hands and fingers, it can get a bit misshapen like this. So you just want to make sure every time you tighten your wire and kind of move it, you just want to smooth it out with your hands and fingers before you then use it again, just to try and avoid any kinks or maybe possible breaks and that. It's going to really help prevent the breaking as well. So just make sure to do that along the way. So now I've finished off making the full length of macrame here, and we can then remove it from our board because we're done actually making the macrame. So just release the wires from the different slots, and then we end up with something like this. So what we have to do now is finish off the ends here, because obviously you can't wear it like this. So I'm just going to show you on one end because it's the same on both. But what we have, of course, are working wires, and then we also have the 3 holding wires there. So I'm just going to take the working wires first. You'll find that they kind of want to go to each their own side. So this one wants to go more towards the front here, and this one wants to go more towards the back. What I'm going to do is bring it around over towards the opposite side in that direction where they want to go, and basically we're now then wrapping them around the base wire on either side there. And then I'm going to go in and just cut off the excess, just leaving a short little tail, something like that. And also cut off the one on the other side, like that. And then we just want to make sure we squeeze down the little wire ends that we have left. You're going to be able to feel them with your finger, so just make sure to squeeze them down into the knot. And also the other one. That way they get tucked away. And then as for the rest of the wires here, what I'm going to do is just kind of bend them over in the opposite direction to where they're going. Just so basically they're kind of a stopper and won't pull through the wire macrame. So we can just bend them basically so they come straight across. Then I'm going to go in and cut off the excess, so we just have some short little lengths. Now this first one here I'm cutting off around the middle. we then have the actual middle wire. I'm just going to cut that off so we make sure that none of them go beyond the sides, and the same with the remaining one here. Because now what we have is we've ended up with a straight edge that we can then put inside of our ribbon end, and there's also not too much bulk, and it's going to fit just perfectly like that. So that is what we need to do now, is glue this on. So we're going to grab the glue here, and I'm just going to use a toothpick as an application tool. So just get a bit on to that, and then what we need to do is get some glue down into our ribbon end. Now we don't have to fill it up completely because obviously a piece is going to go in there, so any excess glue is just going to come spilling out, but just make sure to cover the inside walls. And then what I personally like to do is whatever I have left, or you can add a bit more, I like to put that on the end of the bracelet itself, and just make sure to really get it in there between the wires and the nooks and crannies, because that way when we put the two pieces together and they dry, they're going to adhere really nicely and securely. So something like that. And then we can grab our ribbon end, place it over the top, make sure all the wire ends get tucked inside, and then push that as far down as it'll go. Then I like to put a finger on either side and kind of hold it in place while I'm clamping it down. And you just want to do a bit at a time, kind of go from side to side. And when it's almost all the way down, I just remove my fingers and make sure it's still in the middle, so positioned correctly. If you need to do any final adjustments, then you can go in and do your final squeeze and make sure it's going to be nice and tight. And I also like to go in from the sides and just close those up. And there we go. And then of course you need to leave this to dry so it's nice and secure. We then have a loop here that we can attach our findings. So of course we also need to just go on the other end, repeat the same thing, finish that off in the exact same way. And then all that's left to do once we've done that is shape the bracelet. So now I have my findings on both ends here. And to shape it, what I'm just going to do is use my hands and fingers, go in and start putting a curve into it. And of course you want to make sure you have the side that you want to be the main one pointing towards you. And then just keep adding a curve going back and forth until we get the two ends to meet each other, so we can of course use the clasp. You can also shape it around something that has the size and shape you want it to have, like a bracelet mandrel or anything else you have handy. But otherwise we're pretty much getting there. And then we're able to use the clasp so we have the finished bracelet ready to wear. And then you get this really cool effect where it almost looks like the bracelet is changing color as you're moving it and you're seeing it from different angles. So obviously it's not actually color changing, but it does give a really cool effect. And all we do is use simple macrame. Now if you want to see more wire macrame, I have loads more tutorials on my channel and also within many other mediums. You can check out my channel and have a look for yourself, and while you're there, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.